Welcome to Mind Decoded, where we explore the psychology behind human behavior. Let's decode today's topic. You're on a video call while responding to emails. You're writing a report while monitoring Slack. You're listening to a presentation while checking your phone. You're multitasking, getting more done in less time, being efficient, except you're not. You're on the call but you missed the key point someone just made. You're writing the report but you'll have to reread that paragraph 3 times because it doesn't make sense. You're monitoring Slack but you'll have to ask someone to repeat what they said. You feel productive, you feel busy, but the quality of everything you're doing is degraded. And it's taking longer than if you had done each task sequentially with full attention. Here's the truth that productivity culture doesn't want you to know. Multitasking is neurologically impossible. What you're actually doing is called rapid task switching. And every switch has a cost that adds up to massive productivity loss. Understanding what actually happens in your brain when you try to multitask changes everything. It explains why you're exhausted despite not finishing anything important. It reveals why your error rate skyrockets. And it shows you why the people who appear most productive are actually doing less simultaneously, not more. Today on Mind Decoded, we're exploring why multitasking is a myth. What your brain is actually doing when you think you're multitasking. The measurable cognitive costs of task switching. Why some people are convinced they're good at multitasking despite all evidence. And how to restructure your work to eliminate unnecessary switching. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical, psychological, or mental health advice. If you're experiencing mental health concerns, please consult with a qualified mental health professional. Let's start with the neuroscience. Your prefrontal cortex can only fully focus on one complex task at a time. This isn't a limitation you can overcome with practice. It's how human brains are structured. When you try to do 2 cognitively demanding tasks simultaneously, your brain rapidly switches between them. This switching happens so fast that you experience the illusion of doing both at once. But you're not. You're alternating attention rapidly. Here's what happens during each switch. Your brain must disengage from task A, shift cognitive resources. Re-engage with task B, load the relevant context. Then when you switch back, the entire process repeats. Psychologist Gerald Weinberg quantified this. Working on one task, you get 100% of your cognitive capacity. Adding a second task, you don't get 50% on each. You get 40% on each. 20% is lost to switching. 3 tasks simultaneously, 20% cognitive capacity per task. 60% lost to switching overhead. You're operating at a fraction of your capability. But the costs are even higher than raw time loss. Researcher Sophie Leroy discovered attention residue. When you switch away from an unfinished task, part of your attention remains stuck on that task. Your brain doesn't immediately release it. So when you switch from writing to email, you're reading email with reduced capacity because part of your brain is still thinking about the writing. When you switch back to writing, you're writing with reduced capacity because part of your brain is still processing the emails. This residue persists until you either complete the original task or your brain has enough time to fully release it. If you're constantly switching, you're always operating with attention residue. You never access your full cognitive capacity. The error rate implications are dramatic. A study by the University of London found that multitasking during cognitive tasks lowered IQ scores by an average of 15 points. That's equivalent to staying awake for 24 hours straight. Another study found that people who were interrupted during complex tasks made twice as many errors as those who completed tasks without interruption. The errors weren't small typos. They were significant mistakes in judgment and logic. Here's what makes this particularly insidious. Multitasking feels productive. Switching between tasks creates a sense of urgency and busyness. Your brain releases small hits of dopamine each time you switch to something new. This creates an addiction loop. Task switching feels rewarding even though it's destroying your productivity. You're getting neurochemical reinforcement for behavior that's harming your output. Research by Gloria found that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully return to a task after an interruption. 23 minutes to rebuild the context, reload your working memory, and regain focus. If you're being interrupted every 6 minutes, which is typical for knowledge workers, you literally never reach full engagement with any task. You spend your entire day in a perpetual state of partial attention. Now let's address the myth of people who are good at multitasking. Studies have repeatedly shown that people who think they're good at multitasking are actually worse at it than people who rarely multitask. The people who multitask constantly have trained their brains to switch rapidly. But rapid switching still carries the same cognitive costs. They're not more efficient, they're just more comfortable being inefficient. Research by Clifford Nass at Stanford found that heavy multitaskers are worse at filtering irrelevant information. They're worse at organizing information. And ironically, they're worse at switching between tasks because they can't ignore distractions. The only exception is when one of the tasks is completely automatic. You can listen to music while running because running is automated. You can have a conversation while walking because walking requires no conscious attention. But you cannot write a report while reading emails. Both tasks require your prefrontal cortex. Both require working memory. Both require conscious attention. Your brain must switch between them. So how do you eliminate unnecessary switching? The key is task batching. Instead of responding to emails as they arrive, batch all responses into 2 or 3 designated times. Instead of checking Slack every few minutes, check it twice per hour. Instead of allowing meetings to fragment your day, cluster them together and protect blocks of uninterrupted time. This isn't just organization, you're reducing context switches. Each reduction multiplies your effective cognitive capacity. Here's a framework. Identify high-value tasks requiring genuine thinking. Writing, analysis, strategic planning, problem-solving, creative work. Protect these with strict boundaries. During high-value work, you're completely unavailable. Email closed. Slack closed. Phone off. One thing with full attention. Schedule shallow work in batches. Email 9 to 9:30. Messages 11 to 11:15. Administrative tasks 3 to 4. You're concentrating the context switches. Communicate these boundaries. Let colleagues know when you're available and when you're not. Most reasonable people will support this once they understand you're optimizing for output. Many workplaces expect instant responsiveness. If you're in an environment requiring constant availability, you can advocate for change, protect early mornings or late evenings, or evaluate whether this environment enables your best work. Studies show fewer than 2% of emails and messages are truly urgent. The vast majority can wait 2 hours. The expectation of instant response is cultural, not operational. Here's a diagnostic exercise. For 1 week, track every time you switch tasks. Note what triggered the switch. Was it an external interruption or self-initiated distraction? Most people discover they're switching tasks dozens of times per hour. And the majority of switches are self-initiated. They're checking email or messages not because something arrived, but out of habit or boredom. Understanding your switching patterns gives you targets for intervention. If you're self-interrupting every 5 minutes, that's a habit you can change. If you're being interrupted externally, you need environmental modifications. The bottom line is this. Every task switch makes you stupider temporarily. If you're switching constantly, you're operating in a permanent state of reduced intelligence. This isn't about working harder. It's about working with how your brain actually functions. Single tasking isn't a luxury for people with simple jobs. It's a requirement for anyone doing cognitively demanding work. You're not bad at multitasking because you lack some special ability. You're bad at multitasking because multitasking is bad. It's neurologically impossible to do well. The people who appear most productive have simply learned to protect their attention and do one thing at a time. Next time on Mind Decoded, we're exploring a scheduling method that eliminates decision fatigue and maximizes your productive hours. Time blocking. Why planning every hour of your day actually increases flexibility. How top performers structure their calendars. And the specific framework for building a time-blocked schedule that actually works. Don't miss it. And that's how the mind works. If this helped you understand yourself better, subscribe for weekly psychology insights. Thanks for watching.